Hello, everyone, and welcome to the knowledge series on ApnaCourse. This series today is going to talk on the Pmi-Acp certification. ApnaCourse is happy to have Mr. Venkatraman with us today. He is the faculty of the various Agile courses on ApnaCourse. He has an extensive experience of over 16 years across program, project, and portfolio management. He is currently in the IT portfolio team at a an upcoming specialty hospital in the Middle East. He is a PMI ACP, PMP, MOP, PMI RMP, a CSM, CSP, ITL Foundation, a COVID 5 certified professional, and he has many more certifications to his credit. He was a volunteer faculty at the PMI Bangalore chapter, and he is the core member of the Agile India 2016. He's a continuous learner and a conference enthusiast. We're happy to have you on board in today's session, sir.
Thank you, Satish.
So the idea of such knowledge series with experts like you is to bring in an understanding of the various certifications in the market and how each of those certifications would help participants or learners grow their career profiles. So today's certification, given your extensive background in PMI ACP, would focus on the ACP certification per se. So before we get into the details of the ACP certification, we could have a quick run on why or what is Agile specifically, and then drill down to the specifics of the PMI ACP. So could you help us with what is Agile and why is Agile as a concept gaining importance?
Definitely. Before that, a small correction to the way you mentioned about my word of an expert. I still believe I'm a long way to go there. I'm still a practitioner. I don't want to claim any expertise on anything because what I've learned is what I could learn in the time frame and the thing that I got an opportunity to learn. So that's great. So starting with what is Agile, it's a very widely used term. Some people term Agile as Agile methodologies. Some people talk about it as a software development framework. Some people talk about Agile being Agile. So it's about the noun versus verb that you're going to talk about. But primarily an Agile software development, if you look at it, is a set of project development methodologies, or you could say software development methodology. And by this, what I mean is it doesn't mean that it is not applicable to non-software. So I don't want to be very focused only on the software part, but it is one of those methods in which the entire the process is all about iterative and incremental way of developing a product or a service, whichever you're developing, using a time-boxed method, and it uses cross-functional teams as well as self-organized teams. So these are couple of tenets of what Agile is all about. It is also what you could say is that the entire software development approach helps evolve the product over multiple phases rather than trying to deliver all at the end. So that is the simplistic way of putting it in terms of how you could call it Agile, and it is not something that is very new or anything of that sort. It's been almost I think the entire thing would be probably close to 2 decades if really we have to go back. But the impact of it is in the last decade, I would say.
Okay. And you did say that it's heavily or at least more focused on the IT services space. But are there other domains or other industry verticals that use Agile as a concept?
With my knowledge on these things, I have been following up. I've been reading some articles in terms of how Agile is being used in multiple places. Agile by itself, as I mentioned, is a pretty, it's a framework of multiple methodologies, which could be called it as saying, it could be Scrum, Kanban, and Lean, and be it any name that DSDMs and things like that people call out. These methodologies would probably be used in various organizations and various industry verticals. The long answer short is that yes, Agile is not only IT focused, but primarily extensively used in IT, and that's where my expertise comes from. So just to kind of touch upon few other IT related things that we could kind of talk about, I know for a fact that Intel completely did their recently in the 2013-2014 time space, their tablet that Intel came out with their tablet. It involved hardware, it involved the procurement of things, it involved putting all these together along with the software, firmware, packaging, plastics, everything. The entire project of this was done in an agile environment. It was purely done through agile, and that's the beauty of what we're trying to talk about. It is not only for your website development or for your small products and things like that. It is also being used extensively in healthcare. GE and Siemens and everybody is into big time agile right now. There are companies in the financial background. I know for a fact JP Morgan, who's in the financial services side, is completely in the last 3 years. I think they have ramped up their agile team, and a lot of other banks that I have been seeing and hearing, where I've also had a chance to interview with them and things like that. So those are the places where, just to call out at least the top level manufacturing, you talk about healthcare, you also talk about financial banks, financial services, not just banks, financial services, which not just the only the banks, but the mutual funds or whatever you can call that to be, anywhere and everywhere where the focus is towards deriving value or deriving early value for customers or for people who really are going to be working very closely with you to get things out to the market much faster. That's where agile would be a great fit, and I don't see why agile wouldn't be used in places of defense or anything else in the future. So maybe it's already being done, and probably I am oblivious to it. So I don't want to claim any knowledge of things that I'm not fully aware of. But then these are the places where I have seen that firsthand.
Okay, okay. With that background, how different are these concepts with when compared to the traditional project management principles?
There is difference. Of course, I wouldn't say, people just say, oh, it's agile is as simple as traditional, what we are doing, just some minute changes. No, I think it's a fundamental shift on the mindset. That's the first change from what we are trying to look at. Couple of things about is, let's start off with the business value. What do we mean by business value? I put in $100 onto something. How fast and how much will I be able to get in return is what my business value that anybody looks at. Nobody does projects for charity, right? At the end of the day. So business value, if you look at it, that's the very first and foremost thing. Now, question is traditional not giving me business value? Yes, it is giving you business value, but let's take a time frame. I have a project that's probably going to take me 18 months to deliver, right? That's a project that I'm going to take right now. The earliest I would be able to see some business value coming in is only at the 18th month or at the 17th or 16th month when I send it for beta testers or anybody for that matter in a traditional environment. Vis-a-vis in Agile, we start getting it in chunks much earlier, sometimes even at 2.5 months, 3 months, 6 months, even earlier. And the beauty of it is that there are certain things that we might discard in the entire set of things that we want to do from a traditional perspective. If we had 50 requirements to be delivered at the end of the 18th month in traditional, we would probably deliver 10, 12, 16, 24. That way, as we move forward, probably the last 10 requirements are not even required. There is it's been a 1980s saying that, or some report that I think the Standish report or something that came out, which said only 16% of Microsoft Word's features are being used. That doesn't mean that Microsoft has done some grave mistake out there. It's just a matter of, if Microsoft were to do a product right now, probably they'll think about doing top 25 to top 40% of the features rather than delivering all the 100 features. So that's the first change. The second one is about visibility. Many of us know how the visibility in terms of a traditional thing happens. You start the project, everybody is gung-ho about it. They come into the meetings, you see an SVP level person sitting there, client side senior people sitting there. Afterwards, they completely dips. Weekly once, monthly once, you have some meeting with the customer, and then towards the end, they come back and say, oh, this is not what we wanted. So that is fundamentally shifting from a visibility perspective. Agile goes by a time boxed iteration, time box as we call it. So which means every 10 days, you have to deliver some value, you have to showcase some value, you have to showcase some business value. The person has to agree to that. The customer needs to kind of look into it and try to kind of look at it. So that is this second tenet of it. Third is going to be then the risk factor. Risk is very high in terms of Agile at the beginning because many things you would probably not know. And then you move towards lowering that risk because you are trying to work on high risk items and high value items. So if you draw a quadrant where you want to say risk versus value, you will always pick the high value, high risk items and try to get them done much faster because you don't want to take the risk to the end where the project will not see the end of the day. So those are a couple of things that I would look at. The other one is also about usability and adaptability, which is very clear that from a website, for example, if I was been working with a website for almost 3.5 years now, I wouldn't say website, a single website. I was with AOL properties, almost 26, 30 properties that I've probably Scrum managed and project managed when I was at AOL. The beauty of it is that we don't deliver all of it at once towards 6 month end, right? We do it every month, every 45 days. We have a big launch going out. It is being tested in the beta servers. It is being tested in multiple places. So it is the point that I'm trying to drive here is that it is very important to understand the fundamental shift between traditional and agile. Is the core thing is about firstly customer business value. Second, the interaction of the customer. Third is about adaptability of the thing, that early adaptability, early feedback. The moment you are able to showcase some tangible thing to people, they provide you feedback. So that's the third thing. Fourth is about the risk that we are trying to talk about. So there are multiple of these sorts. And one of the other thing is also about not doing things that you don't want to do. So that's probably the fifth one that I'll end with in terms of what the thing about traditional versus agile would be. And embracing change is a constant thing. That's one of the extreme programming words. Embracing change is something that's very easy in an agile environment than in a traditional where you lock down everything saying I've frozen design, I've frozen code, I've frozen testing. Now I'm in UAT. Now if I have to go back all the way, I'll have to kind of start everywhere. So those are a couple of differences between a traditional and an agile. And the reason why I spent a little longer time explaining this is the fundamental thing that people need to understand when they're transitioning from a traditional world to an agile world, and not believe that, hey, we could do a waterfall inside a sprint or an agile time box.
Okay. Okay. But given that this transition has happened only in the last 2 decades or so, the agile principles or the methodologies per se, how do you see it growing for the next 10-15 years? Do you see that it will grow, it will inculcate new concepts and new principles and grow larger, or would it just die a natural death and people will come back to traditional methods again?
My personal take on it would be that coming back to traditional, I just want to go back from the last point. Coming back to traditional would be counterproductive for anybody for that matter. That happens. I have seen it personally happen with me in a couple of engagements where there is a little less understanding of what Agile could do for them. Second, misleading people in terms of trying to say, hey, Agile is not working for us primarily for XYZ reason. These are some loose reasons why Agile could probably fail and traditional could take getting the Gantt chart in and trying to plan the entire thing out and all that is the only thing that can probably drive back traditional into the system. But I believe by and large, Agile is going to take a larger leap, and there's nothing like a growth here. I mean, Agile is not, nobody is, you can't, what do I call it? You can't do what is it called? Copyright on it. It's just not that way. There's quite a bit of methodologies that suit certain teams. Like some teams, Scrum suits much better. Some teams are happy with just Scrum. They don't want to do anything else. They don't want to fix their other problems. They just are doing a basic Scrum methodology and moving forward. Some teams do not believe that Scrum is going to work for them. They'll move to Kanban, which is like no time box, but stop picking up the new until you finish the current one. So a lot of these mix and matches is going to take it forward. Now again, I don't want to go back into nitty-gritties of Scrum and Kanban, things like that, but the bigger point that I want to raise here is that, or I want to answer you is, yes, it's going to have a larger focus. The core thing that will benefit any organization is to understand, why they first of all need to get into an agile. That's a question that I ask people saying, tell me why, just Just because your neighbor is doing, it's like, my neighbor's son is doing great, so he's going for an IIT coaching class, let's also send my son there. That's how the traditional mindset starts, in terms of, we don't want to do Agile for that. Like, this bank is doing Agile, so let's also get into Agile. No way. The question is, what problem are you trying to solve? And if people can believe that the problem that they're trying to solve is to solve customers' business problem faster, feedback is faster, early bugs can be found out, early issues can be ruled out. I'm going to derive more business value. I'm going to stop doing things that I don't want to do in my life. These are certain things that will drive adoption of Agile in the upcoming decade. A simple point that I want to end with is that from a point of view of just being a development, they went into a point of continuous integration. Now there is a concept of continuous deployment using DevOps and everything. So Agile itself in the last decade has really gone multiple notches above than what it originally started with. So I'm pretty happy with how people have taken it forward, but I'm also worried that there might be people who might want to put a spoke in the wheel and bring back traditional just for the sake of elongated projects and happy with what they are trying to do and sit back and have longer projects and meet with the customer once in a while and just make a good time out of it. So that is something that is a little bit worrisome. But Agile is going to stay, and probably I'm just hoping it's going to be more and more improved.
Okay, fantastic. And since we have the background now to agile concepts, and also an introduction to lean, Kanban, etc., the ideal question next would be as to what certifications does one kind of say conquer or get certified in to showcase himself as an agile knowledgeable person.
Yeah. Very good question, because this is time and again that keeps coming up, and it is in a way yes or no, because I have to really agree to the fact that certifications have now become a part of the business. It has become a big it's a business money making machine, but at the same time there is value to certification. There's definite value to having the right certifications and the limited certifications that you need to know. Personally, I have had a huge amount of benefit from a personal morale and a personal benefit from having any of these certifications, and I've handpicked each of these. So coming back to the Agile ones, why I mentioned that particular point was many people say, hey, I just want to do some certification this year. Can you suggest something? That's not a great way to start off on something. That is why I kind of mentioned that you have to pick the right certifications, especially with Agile. There is close to around 10 plus certifications that you can get involved with. There are multiple organizations like Scrum.org, Scrum Alliance, Scaled Agile Framework, PMI, PMI is Pmi-Acp. So there are multiple of these certifications that, Is Agile. There is one company called Is Agile. So there is no end to it. There is APMG also having an Agile certification into it. So everybody has an Agile part of the certification. Now, coming back to, let's talk about only few of them which are very prevalent, and again, rest of them are also equally good, but from my perspective, from my experience, I've gone through. The Certified Scrum Master is typically the basic certification that people who want to just get into the Agile mode would probably kind of go with. That only talks about a 2-day introduction, hands-on, play-based learning in terms of Scrum, which is just one methodology under the big Agile umbrella. But Scrum, as you say, every year I've been watching the version 1's report, or the every year there's Agile guys run the report in terms of which terminology is better and who's using what. Scrum has continuously grown from like 30% adoption to somewhere around 60%. It's close to around 59 in the last year. So Scrum is widely used because it's very simple. It's absolutely simple. So that is one of the things. That's what Scrum tells you. Certified Scrum Professional is another certification on top of the CSM. If you are a CSM and you have been in the Agile practice for almost a couple of years, then you will be able to get your CSP, which is your Practitioner certificate. That is one part of it. The other one is talking about Is Agile's couple of things, certifications, which is again same over PSM. There's another school of thought on Scrum.org's PSM and other certifications. I'm completely not into them, but you will be able to look up all these. The third one is about I would say SAFE, which is one of the scaled agile thing, which talks about how to scale your agile across a larger organization. And if it is going to be companies like Intel, GE, and everybody who's going to do projects, or HP, who's going to do projects across say 20 different teams, and they have to come together to run a large, big printer, or be it a big scanner or a sonographic machine. Scaled agile will really come handy there. So that's one of the other certifications, which again, there are multiple certifications in terms of scaled agilist, a safe practitioner, who can further take classes and things like that. So everything is open in the market to read about and understand what you want to do. The thing that I liked about PMI's ACP, which I was privileged to be one of the pilot exam takers in 2011, where they in fact asked us to kind of write the exam. Now ACP has also gone ahead and enhanced the certification by one more time. They have done a role delineation study and do that. Pmi-Acp is very involved because it just doesn't talk about Scrum. It talks about Scrum, Lean, Lean Kanban. It talks about extreme programming. It talks about other methodologies, which is very vital for any organization to really implement Agile. Scrum by itself will help you to just get started, but Scrum doesn't talk about a T about technology. It just doesn't talk a word about technology, or how an engineer should talk. How should engineers really work? How should an engineering team really deliver products? How should you're supposed to do your pair programming or your test driven developments and things like that. There's no mention of that in the Scrum or in a CSM. So a CSM is great for people who just are starting their career into Agile. They don't need to even know or be in part of an Agile team to really understand a CSM, whereas the other certifications demand a little bit of your knowledge in terms of what it is. So there's enough certifications in the market on Agile. People can just go make a lot of certifications behind their name, but I would strongly recommend CSM to start with, CSP maybe, Pmi-Acp, and SAFE, and couple of other Scrum.org and IC Agiles. So all of these are open based on what really people are looking at for their career growth.
Okay, and since you touched upon the Pmi-Acp, since its inception in 2011, how have you seen that certification grow? Meaning, has it grown exponentially, or are the takers low in numbers?
Yeah, it has. I was surprised to see the numbers. I was in a gathering. It's a 1-hour program in the Middle East. Just one of the person who's in charge of the Middle East certification side had come and spoken. When I saw the numbers, I was a little aghast. It was around 8,300 people in mid 2015, which is pretty good growth from 2012 is when they really started to roll it out. 2012, 13, 14 and 15, it's around 8,300 people, and that's a big number. At least PMI might not consider it a big number. They might probably see that as a challenge, but because they do have certain restrictions in terms of who can apply. So that's why probably the numbers are a little bit low. I'll come to it when we talk about more about it. But then I'm saying from perspective, yes, the growth has been very high, and I'm happy to see that certification gaining a lot of traction, because it covers not just the managerial aspects of project management, but also the technical aspects in a larger way. In fact, in the exams, I'm looking at only 15 to 16% of Scrum-based questions or anything, but more to do with a lot more of the Lean and XP as a larger chunk of the exam base for Pmi-Acp.
Okay. And how different is this Pmi-Acp from the Pmi PMP certification?
That's a good question.
Because the reason I'm asking you this, Mr. Venkat, the reason I'm asking you is many people that I have come across who are PMP certified are Pmi-Acp certified. Including yourself. So, is there a correlation between these two certifications, or is it that you know PMP? It's also ideal that you know the Pmi-Acp, or it's just ironic that those who are done the PMP have also done the ACP?
I would probably say they're complementary. There is no there is no reason why one person who has done an PMP should not do a ACP, or an ACP person not do a PMP, because PMP is not about recognition. I'm again very clear about certifications. I don't go ahead and look and saying, hey, I'm a PMP. No. What did I learn? What did I gain out of doing the PMP is what at the end of the day will add value to me. Probably headhunters looking out for PMPs, I might show up in one. That's the only added advantage I look at, or the organization will trust saying this guy understands project management, right? So ACP is similar. So the whole concept, if you look at what the ACP's requirement from a perspective is going to be, it requires you to have 1500 hours of agile experience. So that's where we start with. That's very different from what a PMP was requiring, right? PMP just requires you to be in, like having a 4,500 project hours across the 5 things of initiation, planning, execution, closure, and control. Control and closure. So the fact is, here we are talking about a person who's been in an agile environment, wants to upgrade his or her skills. And let's take an example of somebody who's a PMP, who knows how a project needs to be run. Now, the question is that given that we spoke about already how the traditional and agile is little different in terms of how the STC triangle itself is very different. One thing I missed out talking about is we have a scope, that bigger triangle in the traditional way. We have a scope. We define the time and the cost, saying it takes 18 months to do. Here's my cost of the project. In Agile, we flip the triangle totally top down and say my cost is going to be the number of people in my team plus any additional resources of machines and desktops and Amazon Web Services and everything that I have. My time is going to be 2-week based or a 3-week based iterations. This is my scope that I can do. And such similar sprints is what I can probably plan but not commit. And then I move forward. This fundamental shift will give some understanding. I mean, the project manager will now be perplexed in terms of how do I go and pitch it, in terms of how do I go and deliver the product to the customer. How do I go and talk to the customer about billing, contracts, and everything in terms of it. So Agile is a very different tenet. So Pmi-Acp touches upon how Agile project needs to be run. What are the different things that would come in from a perspective of contractual, technical, doing things which are only priority, doing things which are only needed, and not things which are just given to me. I'll go back to the customer and ask him saying, prioritize this for me. No, the customer would say, do everything. No, prioritize this for me. I'm going to do only top 10 in the next 3 weeks, next 3 months. This is how we are going to be laying it out. Let's talk about, in the meanwhile, you are more free to go ahead and try doing the rest of things. So and PMP had a lot, and still has a lot of good things about risk management, procurement management, the entire 9, now it's almost 12, with the 5 IPEC and the 9 and the 12 knowledge area and process groups and things like that. So those are the things which people at any given point of time still need to understand. In an agile environment, you try to scale it down. You probably will not do that amount of extensive documentation, that amount of plan, because in an agile part, in PMP, we say plan is everything. Execution follows the plan. Here, a plan is typically useless. Planning is everything. Planning and replanning and planning is what the whole thing about Agile. So from my perspective, a PMP holding a Pmi-Acp is a definite feather in the cap, and it's more likely that you will see a lot more of these in the near future.
Okay. And you touched upon the eligibility criteria of a 1500 Agile specific work experience. Apart from that, what other constraints are there for attempting the Pmi-Acp certification?
Okay, so I want to take it from a 2 different perspectives. One from a PMI's perspective, one from my practitioner perspective. I've also told this to multiple people whom I have seen in close quarters in the last year also, who do not come from a hardcore technical hands-on coding background, right? So from a PMI's perspective, very simple. Everything is listed in the PMI website. So I don't want to go ahead and sound like a PMI person out here. The question is, yes, you need 2000 hours of general working experience on projects, and specifically 8 to 10 months of agile project experience, which means you have been in an agile Scrum environment or an XP environment or whatever it needs to be. You have done an iterative development, you have done an iterative and incremental kind of development, and you have done you have your product guy who's giving you a prioritized requirement, you do all your agile ceremonies and everything, and you keep moving in that person is somebody who probably will be in a good position to take up a agile certification. On top of it, like what PMP mandates, agile also looks at 21 hours of contact program, that it's like you learn something about the agile concepts and everything, which is one of the PMI ACP's product from my ApnaCourse. If you look at it, those are the kind of things that you would definitely require to be able to take care in being, first of all, eligible, and you are subject to audits by PMI on like any other certifications, and that's what are the different things. The second part, which you are asking about eligibility, is about how you will pass the exam, which is, are you eligible to study? Yeah, you can study anything in the world. I could still go ahead and study, complete medicine and everything. That's not a different point. But if you're not from a technical background, you've been in a non-technical reporting kind of a background and everything, understanding a test-driven development or an extreme programming based things about continuous delivery, deployment and everything wouldn't come so easy. It's not that you cannot read up. Extreme programming is one of the core things in a technical environment, in a coding, in a software development environment. If your team is not implementing XP practices, I believe that you're going to be slow. That's again a personal experience based thing, that most 80% of problems that teams come back in their daily stand-ups as well as in their retrospectives is technical. The less 20 is all about saying, hey, I wasn't given the requirement on time, blah, blah. That's a standard thing that keeps coming. But most of the time it's about, hey, the integration did not work fine. This module did not interact with the other module correctly. The service was down. This is that. Everything has got to do with technical. It's got nothing to do with a product manager not giving you the right requirement. So Pmi-Acp, unlike CSM, mandates you to have a little more technical expertise to be able to clear the exam very well. Of course, you will be able to pass by skipping those questions or answering them wrongly and getting still go through it. But to be able to act as a good technical manager in an agile environment or as a technical team member in an agile environment, it is very vital that these are also very important for an ACP.
Okay. And I mean, you did mention that it's applicable for entry-level programmers or entry-level managers anyways. So what would be the typical time duration for entry-level agile manager who's probably had, say, 8 months or 10 months experience in agile concepts to prepare for the Pmi-Acp certification and get through with it?
Okay. Before that, I believe so people who are taking this ACP certification needs to read through their practitioner handbook, which talks about what's the minimum criteria. They're talking about having a 12-month experience working on project teams across 5 years of their experience. So I would not recommend a 2-year or 3-year person to directly jump into a Pmi-Acp unless otherwise a person has some agile experience as well as a reasonable SDLC experience to be able to get it. You have CAPM, you have CSM and other things to really take forward. But ACP, at least good, whatever they have mandated, because you might get rejected in the audit itself. So what is the time that people need to spend? Is that your question? More towards what time somebody needs to spend? Again, I have to kind of repeat myself here in terms of saying, if you are in an agile environment, you understand how an agile thing works, reasonably 8 to 12 weeks is good enough. If you spend 4 to 6 hours a week reading up the agile materials, that the reference books, they have enhanced the reference books to now 12 to 14, like 11 to 12 or something. So 3 months, very realistic time frame, 3 months, optimistic 2 months, very person who's not into any of these and still wants to kind of get this certified, I would look at it around 4 to 5 months. Now, I'm not talking about 4 to 5 months as a full time. It's not like man hours, right? So we don't talk about timing your weekends and any weekday you spend like 30 minutes to 45 minutes to read up. That's the duration that I'm talking about. You could expedite your exam preparations by taking up certain classroom training as well as video-based learning, which the concepts will be anyway refreshed to you by the tutor. That's one way to expedite because that's anyway a mandatory requirement of 21 hours. So people cannot skip that and jump away. So that is one thing that is there. But from my perspective, it is all depending on what has been your project and SDLC and agile experience. That will determine a minimum time frame for an ACP. What I've heard from a lot of people, it takes them at least 2 months for them to be comfortable, take some practice tests, and then be able to kind of go ahead and get this certification.
Oh, okay. Okay. And assuming that I complete my PMI ACP certification, what next? What are the career opportunities or growth prospects? See, on the qualitative aspects, I have enhanced my agile concepts. I know lean,
Understood.
Kanban, etc. On the quantitative aspects, is there would I see a growth in salaries, or would I see a hike in opportunities outside? Not just probably say within India, even outside anywhere in the world, would my PMI ACP certification be accepted elsewhere, let's say in Australia or Middle East, and I get good opportunities there?
Yeah, so I wouldn't want to go by the regions because I've not applied to all the regions in terms of the thing. So, but let's kind of get to the answer on the quantitative improvements in terms of it. Number one, I think Indeed.com ran some. I was reading an article about it. Indeed.com ran some survey to understand their findings were that close to around 28% higher salaries were obtained by or the salary was 28% higher for ACP certified professionals than a non-ACP certified professional. Close to around 95 to 120K US dollars annually is what the range was provided. Again, this is an independent survey run by Indeed, so I wouldn't want to, it's their claim. So, but from my perspective, I believe yes, every certification when applied in the right companies and the right environment would be considered, and there would be some salary importance given to that. I'm not in the in the thick of things to really quote any number out here, but then definitely there is going to be financial value add to an ACP certification for sure. Given that it involves both managerial as well as technical aspects of agile. So also the salary and everything is a consequence of how you project yourself and how you learn from this. So that's the whole point. I think we can keep speaking about it, but just that the short answer is yes.
Okay. And we started off with this growth to a PMI ACP certification, which is you start off as an entry level, start off with the CSM, CSP, and then move on to the PMI ACP.
Yeah.
What certifications would you recommend post the PMI ACP?
Now again, it depends on what the organization. So if a person is just being in the, let's look at it one step back. PMI ACP can be done not just by the managers, right? Even the technical team members could do it, tech leads and anybody who's actually who's meeting the criteria of so many number of hours of experience plus agile experience, and the person is willing to kind of learn and move forward. Doesn't need to be that the person has to be a PMP certified. So PMI ACP is an independent one, so in an agile environment. Post that, if the organization is big and they are kind of moving forward, I would probably look at disciplined agile delivery. There's a DAD. There's another thing called LESS, LESS. That's one. There's another certification primarily called SAFE, which I'm one of the certified agilists. SAFE is scaled agile, which is again talking about implementing, and SAFE is also having all concepts that ACP talks about. SAFE starts with the Kanban way of trying to do your portfolio prioritization, all the way up till trying to get your architecture runway, extreme programming practices. It relies heavily on teams adopting technical practices and the managerial practices of stand-ups and everything else governing the rest of the pieces. So SAFE would be one of the safest growth path for people to understand. I'm not selling SAFE here, but then I felt good because I could see a lot of value in understanding SAFe. Though I was implementing a similar one, like SAFe in my previous organization, that time SAFe was not much into the market, but I was happy that it was on more or less the same lines. Though ours was not a very cross-functional, and SAFe demands a lot of cross-functional release teams and everything. So SAFe would probably be the one-word answer if you're looking at that from me.
Okay, okay. And once I'm PMI ACP certified, and I still mean because the ACP principles or methodologies keep updating and changing, is there a way to stay updated? Because there's this concept of the PDUs and continuous learning programs. I mean that's a fantastic model to keep oneself updated on what's happening in the agile environment. But can you elaborate more on this on this topic?
Yes. Again, it is nothing to do only with the Pmi-Acp. So, but we'll talk in the terms of an agile course, because just now in December, I believe the PMI has changed the ways the PDUs can be accrued. So they have kind of broken it down into two parts. One is your typical technical. The other one is going to be more to do with your giving back to the community. So from my perspective, from an agile Pmi-Acp's perspective, yeah, attending conferences could be one of the starting point of trying to learn how other organizations are really implementing agile, how they're implementing SAFe, how they are doing a lot of other things. That's one way to start off. Being in user meets, being in webinars, being in larger organization-wide programs where they want to kind of roll out agile is one of the larger ways to look at. From a perspective of giving back, if you are good at oratory skills and you are good at knowledge sharing with people, there is no dearth of taking classes or volunteering pro bono or even for a pay in many organizations that you could kind of do a weekend. You as an ACP kind of go ahead and teach people how an agile program, how agile transformation happens and what are the basic requirements, not just teaching them only the Scrum ARC, but trying to talk about what could be the potential pitfalls in an organization, what should they look for. Then you kind of interact with your peers. You could do a lot more things that you can gain your PDUs on. I've never found an issue in gaining PDUs with any of the PMI certifications. That's been me. Last 10 years, 2004 is when I certified PMP, but then from then till now, I've always got my PDUs done in the very first year itself. The rest of the years are all bonus for me. But then the reason is that you need to look out for opportunities. There is quite a bit of people who are willing to learn. There's quite a bit that you can learn from the conferences and the interactions that you could do. And all you need to do is look out for them, speak to people, get to know, log in, register, move yourself out there. Rather than sitting at your home and watching TV, you probably can go and spend 3 hours discussing an important concept about lean or Kanban or anything. There's enough happening in the world on this. So I don't think PDUs or anything, or the next step is just trying to see how best somebody else is applying the same thing that I have learned.
Right. Okay. Okay. And the final quick question is how do you see the growth of PMI ACP certification over the next few years? You've seen it grow from the point you started it as a pilot person to 8,500 odd registrants today. How do you think this would continue in the future, and probably at least in the next 5 years, 10 years in the time frame?
It depends on how PMI wants to kind of keep themselves abreast. I couldn't be speaking on behalf of PMI, but then yes, they have covered good ground in terms of whatever is required for a technical team or an agile team to really deliver. So I don't see the growth going slow unless and until there is a real something else coming into the market which is taking away the share that Pmi-Acp should have ideally got. Maybe something like SAFe, which is probably pricing it much. Price also has a big quotient about it. In the Indian scenario, at least, I have seen, how much is the certification? $400. Then the mind starts to multiply it by 60 plus, and people just say 30,000. I think I cannot afford it right now. So the economic things will also play a bigger part. But from going back to the core part, I think ACP is there to stay for the next at least 4 to 5 years. If they do a role delineation study in another 2-3 years and improve it further, I think there is a bright chance for ACP to get into the 5-digit figures or even multi 5-digit figures very soon. 5-digit figure probably they would have reached by now because this was in 2015 somewhere in mid. That was the number. So I think they would have touched 10,000 by now.
Super. And outside the Pmi-Acp certification per se, just a quick, what is this? A backstage note on your Agile India 2016. As Agile India 2016 participant or as a speaker, what is this all about, and how do you see that taking shape for
Yeah.
the Indian audience?
Thank you. It's one of the largest agile conferences that happen every year. It's been happening for the past 7+ years, as far as I know, and I've been an active participant in the last. I mean, I've been attending them conferences from that time, but the last 3-4 years I've been a core team member. 3 years, 2013 I was a team member. 14 I couldn't. So which typically 14 I spoke, but I couldn't be part of the course. 16 I'm also speaking for a 20-minute thing, but it is one of the vibrant conferences where you see a lot more Indian agilists and people who want to learn, people who want to share, come there and be a part of the agile community. And India being one of the largest IT services provider as well as IT products and a lot of startups coming in, it's a very interesting space to know how people have really taken forward and how their agile practice is going, how they are implementing agile in their organizations. Like I was pretty surprised with the crowd of JP Morgans that came in 2014. A huge crowd from JP Morgan, and all of them are into their agile implementations and rollouts, and somewhere 8 months into it, somewhere 1 year into it, somewhere only 2 months into it. So some teams, when I say some teams were into it. So it's a nice stage. I would strongly recommend. It's not very expensively priced also. It's broken down into multiple tracks, so you could choose your track. If you're not a large organization, don't bother about enterprise agile. Go to the technical side. If you're a leadership, go to the leadership track and only attend that day. And you could save the rest of the days for you at office. So it's not like 1-2 day packed conference with everything it's like a la carte. But here it's very neatly done. If you want a leadership track, it's on a single day, and all you need to spend is take the day away from work and come and attend it. If you want to have an enterprise agile, then you have a complete track for it. If you want to do a technical, which is DevOps and everything, then you have a separate day for it. So it's one of the conferences to look forward, and I'm planning to be there in March to attend it.
Fantastic. Okay. Mr. Venkat, I've kind of gone through the set of questions I had, and it's been a fantastic session with you on those on the entire agile perspective itself. Are there anything you have in your mind that you want to share with the participants or the viewers of this video?
Just wanted to say that certifications for the sake of it wouldn't take anybody anywhere. I think people should plan their certifications very well. For anybody who's in the agile track, I strongly recommend ACP. That's what I've been recommending people. But you have to look at whom you're recommending it to also. If the person is not from a technical background, he's going to really miserably fail and come back and tell you that he couldn't do it. Might as well. But if you are in an agile team and the person wants to really be in the agile track, I think ACP is a great way to start. Post that, you could go ahead and do all your scaling and everything, but then get the basics right, get the technical aspects of agile to ensure you're agile. Is the key in what I want to kind of talk to all the participants about. And thanks for the wonderful opportunity, Satish.
Yeah, it's been our pleasure to have you. I think taken more than a half an hour of your valuable time, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board. We'll catch up again, sir, because there are other certifications that we would like to talk to you, and we'll surely have that over the next few weeks or so.
I'm available, yeah.
Perfect.
Nice
So
speaking to you, sir.
thank you so much for your time, Mr. Venkat, and we'll sign off here.
Thank you.